What's up, kids? It's Finn, and welcome to today's riveting episode of Legit Boring. Today's episode is brought to you by Cassie V, 1989, lover of mukbangs and beef jerky. So yeah, there's a shout out. I appreciate you joining me, watching my channel. And so if you guys want a shout out, you want to hear me say something to you, for you, whichever, just leave it in the comments section and I'll see what I can do. But yeah, I wanted to give a special thanks to Cassie V for joining us. Much appreciated, much loved. Stay good. So, I was thinking about gender identity, about specifically androgyny, and how we define it. As a person who doesn't identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth, I do reference conventional femininity, conventional masculinity fairly often. And what those mean, to me at least, is the series of characteristics, traits, roles that encompass your identity and code you as whichever, masculine or feminine, to the people of your culture. So it's very much dependent on culture. It's different from culture to culture. And it's kind of this collective knowledge, this collective understanding that we have of what is seen as conventionally masculine and conventionally feminine. So all this time, I've been referring to what is conventionally seen as feminine and masculine traits in our society, and kind of glossing over, ignoring a glaring detail, that there is also this collective understanding of conventional androgyny. I think as a person who is a part of the LGBT community, that it is important to ascribe meaning to the words that we use and to be consistent. And I think in ignoring the fact that conventional androgyny exists, we are ignoring a very integral part to the experience for a lot of people. So the definition of androgyny is kind of a mix of masculine and feminine traits. And I think it is similar to how bisexuality works, where you have some heterosexual, you have some homosexual, and those things come together and combine to make an entirely different identity. I feel that androgyny is a standalone way of expressing oneself. It's not partially feminine, partially masculine. In its whole, it is, a combination of traits, but it is its own identity. It is its own type of presentation. The whole is more valuable than its parts, is what I'm trying to say. That it has kind of taken on a life of its own and become something entirely different and apart from conventional masculinity and femininity. And of course, over time, as our definitions for different words change, things evolve. And so conventional masculinity, conventional femininity, and conventional androgyny have changed over time. And I think because femininity is a bit more expansive in how someone can present themselves, that androgyny is closer to femininity, or that it has its basis is more rooted in femininity than it is masculinity. Not to say that masculinity is less important, but because what defines masculinity is so stringent, it's so narrow, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for androgyny. And so I like to think of it more as a spectrum where you have one side masculinity, the other side femininity. And I don't know if androgyny is actually smack dab in the middle. I'm not entirely certain. Let me know what you guys think about that. If androgyny to you is right in the middle of masculinity and femininity, or is it, somewhere off on its own, maybe like more like a triangle than a spectrum. But for the sake of simplicity, um, for the sake of using the definition of androgyny as a mixture of femininity and masculinity, you have masculinity on one side, femininity on the other side. Masculinity is very narrow. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space. Femininity is rather broad, takes up a good bit of space, and the overlap in between masculinity and femininity, uh, along with its own space, is androgyny. And so it's got, maybe a quarter of masculinity in it and almost half of femininity. I would think that's how like the spectrum kind of works. Um, and I might be wrong, but I think over time, as we kind of redefine um, how we see presentation, I think that masculinity will creep more towards being in the middle, that the parameters will broaden a bit. It'll be more broad, not as broad as femininity, but I think it'll move more towards femininity as we allow men to be just people rather than these sets of traits that are rather toxic. Um, Not to say that, there isn't toxicity in femininity. I mean, I've done a whole video about it, but the narrowness alone is toxic. It's toxic to feel that you're expected to act a very certain way with little exception. I think it's a lot of pressure for a person to be under. And so I think as we try to redefine what masculinity is over time, that it will draw closer to being more of a constituent of androgyny, that you'll pour a bit more of masculinity into the androgyny glass, and it'll draw a little farther away from femininity towards the middle. I think that's the future that we're moving towards, but I could be just talking out of my ass. Androgyny in general is just very interesting to think about. What are you guys' thoughts about it? Do you find androgyny appealing? I mean, I, for one, find it just extremely appealing, and that is why I have kind of taken on not so much, I mean, I code very feminine, I realize, but I've taken on a lot of more androgynous traits because I feel that it is an appropriate projection of my identity. It feels right. I think for a lot of people, it's just a very comfortable place to be. And of course, if I wasn't married, it would probably definitely be a bit different. I don't mind having more hair, like facial hair, body hair. I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind my voice being a bit lower. And in fact, I've been thinking about doing some vocal training so that my voice will stay at the regular register that it's at, because when you talk to strangers, you're kind of conditioned to go up, to speak like up more in your nose, because we're kind of conditioned to go up in our pitch when we talk to strangers, to be a bit more polite, to be more cordial and inviting. And that's something that I want to unlearn. I want to take out of the way that I present myself, because it's not me, and it's a bit uncomfortable, it's a bit draining, and so I'd rather not do it. But it's kind of a thing that's kind of hardwired for me at the moment, and so I've been thinking about taking some vocal classes to, keep me cool, calm, and collected when I'm talking to strangers rather than going up. Things would be different if I wasn't with a person who is heterosexual, who is very interested in women. Um, but it is my choice to be with this person, and um, I don't feel that I am losing a whole lot and just staying the way that I am and conceding some of the things that I would want. And I mean, I have changed a whole lot. So, as far as my identity goes, I'm in a alright place. So, everything is everything. But yeah, give me your thoughts about androgyny. Do you think it's appealing? Do you think it's weird? Do you think it's gross? Uh, what things do you particularly find androgynous? Because I know it's different from person to person. It's very interesting because androgyny is less what codes you as being masculine or feminine and more what codes you as being neither. And I think that is very, very interesting to think about. So, yeah, what are you guys' thoughts? I'd like to know. And again, I would like to extend the invitation to anyone who would like a shout out just to leave a comment saying whatever you would like me to say, or just saying hi. I'll definitely in my video shout you out because I really appreciate you guys joining me on this journey that we are going on called life. That's really fucking cheesy, but I do appreciate it. So if you have anything you'd like to say, like to hear, let me know. For now, I bid you adieu. Guys, stay good.